Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 16, Episode 131. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Monday. Steelers Nation, a pretty quiet weekend for the Pittsburgh Steelers. It'll pick up this upcoming weekend as the Steelers will begin their rookie minicamp. Still don't know many invites that will be attending minicamp on that tryout basis. We should know those names pretty soon. Maybe get some of these draft picks signed as well. So a little calm right now. We'll take some calm, but should pick up here in a couple of days. Dave, how you doing?
May the 4th be with you.
And also with you.
James Harrison's birthday. That was easy to remember on May the 4th there. So happy birthday to James Harrison, who I'm sure is listening to this show as he preps for his own podcast with Joe Hayden. Is that a daily podcast with those two?
Just about, it seems like, at least during the week.
All right. So May the 4th, I guess some of the upcoming things on the NFL calendar are yet to be determined. I know there's I think an article on Pro Football Talk about the schedule release and how that might not happen until I think the week of May the 18th. I think there's some interview that happened on a podcast with what's his last name, North, I think, who does the scheduling and all like that. So I would imagine we'll start hearing a little bit more about when the schedule release is likely to happen. But don't be surprised if it's not next week when it kind of, I don't want to say typically or regularly, but I think we become accustomed to a couple weeks after the draft, that thing dropping there. So that's something obviously on the NFL calendar to look for. And as you mentioned, the Steelers have their rookie minicamp coming up this coming weekend, and we'll keep watching about some invites. I'm surprised we don't know more than just a couple of invites just yet, but plenty of time to pour over those as they start to come in. And already looking forward to possibly the Wednesday show. I think you and I have decided that we're going to try to effort a post-draft roundtable session with several contributors on the site to get some of the external thoughts outside of our own on the Steelers draft class, right?
Looking forward to that. So don't know exactly how many will attend. We'll effort and get the word out, back channels today, but hopefully we'll have that for Wednesday and have a little different perspective on the NFL draft. We know one former Steeler who was in rookie minicamp over the weekend, Chase Claypool, got a look invite from the Green Bay Packers to participate in their weekend. You can have up to, I think, 5 veterans for rookie minicamp. I don't believe he was signed, but Claypool trying to make a return to the NFL.
Yeah, and wasn't Green Bay one of the teams that was looking to potentially trade for Claypool several years ago? And I think the story or the narrative at the time when they traded him to Chicago was that Green Bay had essentially offered the same thing, but the Steelers liked the chances of Chicago's pick, that second rounder, I guess, that year being higher than Green Bay's. So I guess if you connect the dots, that's probably why they're now at the point of maybe potentially looking at Claypool. I think didn't they, they could potentially use an experienced receiver over there. So I haven't heard anything other than the tryout and all. I don't know if they're going to sign him or anything, but that's some interesting former Steeler news to talk about. And John Rice Plumlee, I think, has landed in the UFL with the Houston Gamblers. So might be fun to watch if he gets a crack potentially at the quarterback position. I don't even know how many games are left for the UFO. I would imagine quite a few at this point. But I think that's all the kind of relative ex-Steeler news right there.
One potential Steelers, I wouldn't call it news, but one comment I think worth mentioning on a slow Monday, Mike DeFabo of The Athletic was on SNR a couple days ago. They asked him about Darnell Savage and whatever happened there. Reportedly agreed to a deal in March. We've heard nothing since it has not been made official as of this recording. And DeFabo seemed to say that it still could happen. He says, quote, there was some type of a medical issue that delayed it, but it did not wipe the deal out. Basically, the Steelers were like, okay, once this is not a problem anymore, then they're planning to sign it, end quote. So maybe it still will occur. I don't know. It's been a while, so we know that sometimes a medical issue can pop up. That may have been the case with Dean Lowry as he's getting back to full health. So we'll just keep an eye on that. I still will only assume he's on the team until the contract, once the contract is signed. But maybe Savage does have a path to Pittsburgh.
Is there a potential that he ends up as maybe a 1 of the 5 veterans on the rookie minicamp weekend coming up?
I'm not sure if there's a medical issue. I don't know why you'd have to invite him for a tryout. Either if it's a medical issue, once he gets cleared, and if he still wants to sign, the team wants to sign, then sign him. But I suppose all things are possible, so we'll see.
All right, we'll keep our eyes peeled for that, and then once again, come closer to the weekend, or it probably will actually be the morning of May the 8th that we get the roster for the rookie minicamp.
Right. All right, Dave, let's talk about the Steelers rookie class a little bit. I've gone through some of the undrafted free agents a little bit more. I want to go through a couple more names as well. It's not a big class. It's 5 or I think 6 names in total. And, one of them is a kicker, although I did watch the kicker this week, even though his odds of, being able to beat out Chris Boswell are basically 0. But Laith Marjan from Kansas, interesting guy. Was actually really productive. He's bounced around. He's at East Carolina, then South Alabama, and then finished up at Kansas last year. Was really having a couple of strong seasons, then sort of cratered down the stretch last year at Kansas, missing, I think, 3 field goals in his last 3 games, but a pretty strong-legged kicker, and we'll see if he can put on some good tape and try to latch on somewhere else during the season.
Yeah, more than anything, maybe give the Steelers a fallback option should something happen to Chris Boswell. I don't think either one of us expect him, as you stated, to press Boswell much. More than anything, take off some of the reps for him as the summer progresses, if indeed he is signed to the roster coming out of, or I mean, he is actually signed, I guess, right now, so, or will be. We don't have any of the signing bonuses yet, and none of those players have hit the actual roster total yet, as far as the total roster count on the NFLPA site. So we're waiting to find out all the bonuses attached to them, but you would imagine he would be one of the ones that would participate here in the rookie minicamp coming up. And then, assuming he can last on into the start of training camp, maybe we'll see him get a couple of opportunities during some preseason games, and then once again, just had the Steelers have some intel on a potential backup. Should God forbid something happen with Chris Boswell as we move further into the summer here. So, what was his longest field goal at Kansas?
He hit a 55-yarder against Texas Tech. The broadcast I listened to said that he was hitting from 65 in practice. I don't know if that was off of a tee or a holder. There's a difference there, but 55 yards was his long in game. He also was East Carolina's kickoff specialist. Earlier in his career, didn't kick field goals for them, but that kind of shows they trusted his leg and leg strength, and he held that role throughout his college career. So the guy's got a leg. I mean, he was really on it in 24. He only missed 1 field goal the entire season. He was cruising right along in 2025 at Kansas, and then really just got into a slump at the end, missing some very makeable field goals from 36 and 41 yards. Some kicks that stayed to the right on the right hash gave him some problems. He missed 3 field goals in the last 3 games. I think 3 of his final 5 were no good. They weren't bad snaps. They weren't blocked. They were just mishit and not successful on Marjan's part. So he's going to have to avoid those slumps that, really can ail kickers. So obviously, making the 53 in Pittsburgh will be pretty remote, barring something terrible happening to Chris Boswell. We've seen with Matthew Wright and Matt McCrane and others who have been in camp, and Ben Sauls even last year got a look in the Giants. He got to make his NFL regular season debut. If you have a good showing in the summer, you put on good tape, you'll be on the circuit, and some kicker gets hurt or struggles or gets cut. There's always opportunities that open up, and that'll be Marjan's plan.
All right. Who else did you look at of this very small undrafted free agent class?
Kevin Jobity Jr., and I love saying the name. It's a great name to say, but a defensive lineman from Syracuse. This guy's pretty interesting, Dave. I think you should watch his tape a little bit if you haven't already. I know Pittsburgh's defensive line has a lot of depth to it, and they added a sixth-rounder in Gabe Rubio, but Jobity is cut from a similar cloth. He certainly fits that. Pittsburgh's type for defensive lineman has not changed one iota despite this new coaching staff.
Right.
It is the same big, strong, long guys who really play their butt off and hustle to the football, and Jobity is that guy. Now, in comparison to Gabe Rubio, I think Jobity's a better pass rusher, more technical. He's got an array of swipes and swims and rips to beat blockers one-on-one. Not the most athletic, but a good initial burst. So a little more as a pass rusher, not quite as stout at the point of attack against the run, but there's some good reps there. He's a basically one-year guy, had a knee injury in 24, came back in 25, was a full-time starter, and watch him against UConn, watch him against Pitt. He really had some impressive performances. So this is a guy that I think will compete hard for a spot.
And I think he just missed the top 40 defensive tackle list that Dane Brugler puts out. He ended up, I think, I'm looking at
I think
it
above
now.
Rubio. Wasn't he above
Yeah,
Rubio?
I think a couple spots, 5 spots higher than Rubio. Let's see, Dane had him ranked 43rd overall, but number 3 in the best of the rest category, and Rubio was ranked 48th. He measured in at 6'4" and 4/8, or 6'4.5", 308. He got some longish kind of arms on him, I guess, at 33 1/4. Rubio's arms came in at 33 5/8. So there's just a little bit difference there. And like Rubio, he's got some huge hands, 10-inch hands, just like Rubio does there. So a little shorter overall and not quite as long, but I will indeed by the end of the weekend try to throw on some Syracuse tape there. So as you, I'm taking your word for it that better, and it doesn't take much to be a better pass rusher than Rubio
Fair.
is, but you obviously have seen him against the run as well too. You would say Rubio, I would imagine, a far better run defender than Jobity.
He is better. Rubio is against the run than Jobity, but Jobity can play the run too. He can stack and shed and spill, and I mean, there's some good reps. I think that against some of the double teams and trying to really kind of anchor, Jobity has a little more difficulty in being able to be as consistent against the run. But there's certainly there was a blend of good run defense and good pass rush with Jobity that I thought was interesting. But 1-year starter coming off that 24 knee injury. We talk about guys like Ihanichor, who are pretty new to the game. Jobity did not begin playing football until 2021. He was a soccer kid. And then I think COVID pushed the football season to the spring, and the coaches convinced Jobity to give football a try, and he did, and got not a lot of FBS offers. I think Syracuse and Army were his only 2 FBS offers. He got a ton at the FCS level from the Ivy Leagues. Every Ivy League school offered him: Harvard, Yale, Cornell, Penn, Columbia, etc. So smart guy, apparently. Stays local. He's from Buffalo, goes to Syracuse, and really came on strong last year with 6 tackles for a loss and 5 sacks. So the light really came on last year, but he's a high effort kind of a guy who can offer a little bit against the run and the pass, and maybe that's a practice squad spot in Pittsburgh, but I think he'll compete this summer in camp.
Are the short shuttle and 3-cone times evident? Does he have some pretty good change of direction from what you saw on tape there? When you look, I think I'm looking at what Dane Brugler has here, and for a guy his size, pretty impressive short shuttle time of 4.64 and a 3-cone of 7.59. Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't that 4.64 short shuttle? Didn't that match Jennings Dunker, his short shuttle time?
I'd have to look. I'm not sure what the shuttle times were for those guys, but on tape, I thought he was a little bit tight. Jobity was. There's some bend through contact ability, but some of that natural bend, that natural twitch, I didn't see. Some of the change of direction, I thought he got a little bit tight. So I'm not sure if the tape really translates with the testing.
4.63 for Dunker at the combine, which was unfortunately we don't have a lot of short shuttle times even through the pro day circuit when it comes to a lot of players, and I think that's going to be the trend moving forward. But at least we did have one for Dunker there, and I think you just look back historically. That's not a bad 3-cone time for Dunker there comparative to especially guards overall there. So when you match up that Jobity, pretty decent, both 3-cone and short shuttle time. That's one of the things I think I'll be looking for on the tape there.
Yeah, his RAS was 8.87. I'm looking at right now. The agility grades were good. He tested best outside of his height and overall size with a really good 10 split. His 10 split apparently was 169, which is excellent. I don't know how much you can trust some of those things. Is that there's no official time? This was his pro day workout, not a combine workout. His vert was really good at 32 inches. So you do see some of that burst off the ball. I don't know if he can carry that through the whole rush, but he's able to win with some good kind of technical hand use in terms of having an array of moves and being able to beat blocks one-on-one and with those swipes and swims and rip moves through contact. So there's something there with this kid.
All right. Pretty explosive, I guess, overall in the vertical jump too, 32. So maybe we got a practice squad candidate here if he can stay healthy throughout training camp.
They might, but the real thing to take away is Pittsburgh's mold, like I said, has not changed for defensive linemen. They want guys who are 6'4", 6'5", 33+ inch arms, well over 300 pounds that really have great effort, and Jobity on a baseline level checks all those boxes. So I still got to go through the other UDFAs. We already have the report up on Lake McCree, the tight end from USC. We did that before the draft, and so I won't be probably going through him thoroughly again. Josh has evaluated him, but we'll check out the other guys. Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit for Wednesday's show.
All right. That sounds like a winner.
Dave, let's stick with the rookies and what are reasonable and right and fair year one expectations for all of these guys. If we can just kind of go through the 10 picks, don't have to spend a ton of time on any one name, but what are you hoping to get, or what would be a satisfactory or successful even rookie season, starting with Max Ihanichor? Is it to start week one? Is it just to play? Is it just to get better throughout the year? What does a good year one for him look like?
All right, I think the most optimistic kind of view when it comes to Ihanichor would be that he gets implemented either side, right or left, right at the start, coming out of training camp and all, has a good enough, gives the team enough confidence in him that potentially he could be a week one starter. I think the chances of that, obviously, as we sit here right now, is not great, but we'll see what happens with the continued monitoring of Broderick Jones with his neck injury and all. And we talked several times about maybe the pros and cons about switching him early to the left side, right out of the chute, as opposed to maybe keeping him on his most recent familiar side of right side. But I think the most optimistic view would be, hey, this guy can start right out of chute for this team. Moving on to, I guess, the floor as far as expectations go, I would like to see him potentially, and look, obviously how people play ahead of him will be a determining factor. But when you're talking about a first round draft pick in today's NFL, and specifically a key position like a tackle position, I would hope that we get to see him start by either midway point or just into the later half of the regular season there. I think realistically, that's look. This team's been very lucky, as who has said it? Weidel, Omar Khan, several others. Throughout the years, that this team has been fairly lucky overall when it comes to the amount of starts that they've been able to get out of their offensive line. At some point, your odds, I guess, are going to start going back to the mean. I guess at some point there, I don't think it's out of the question to hope for Ihanichor, whatever side, to starting for this team around the midpoint start of the regular season.
That's kind of my thought in terms of a satisfactory expectation for Ihanichor is, could he do the Broderick Jones path to start by week 8, week 9? Now, how exactly does that look? And Does that mean Fautanu gets moved midseason, which is kind of messier than what Jones did, where he just replaced a core four at right tackle, and it was a weird thing with a core four getting benched for disparaging comments. So kind of putting all the particulars aside, if you can get a half season starting out of Ihanacho and he puts on some good tape and cleans up his upper body and punch and hand usage, then I'll call that a good year for him.
Yeah, I would as well too. And the big question we gotta get answered right out of shoot here. And I am. What do you think we're going to hear out of this rookie mini camp with Ihanacho? Do you think we're going to hear mostly right side? Do you think we could we get surprised and he's the starting, or at least maybe the second team left tackle to start things off this coming weekend?
Well, I wonder if we'll hear he's getting a lot of right side reps and they're occasionally putting him left side in drills or in some team activity. I wonder if we'll hear that. So I try to keep an open mind about things. I don't think Pittsburgh is married to any one thing, but I think for a rookie to come in, put him in his natural spot, the spot he's played throughout his career at Arizona State at right tackle, and get those basics down first before you start introducing a new position or newish position on top of everything else brand new the NFL is going to offer him.
All right.
All right, second round pick, Jeremy Bernard. This one's interesting, Dave. We know that he's a talented guy. We're happy about the selection, but what is a successful season, assuming that Rodgers does return? We know that his track record with young guys and rookies is not particularly strong. Felt that with Roman Wilson last year. So what's a successful or at least decent year for Bernard?
I think looking at it at least from a statistical standpoint, I think this team would be doing good to get him around the 40 reception mark for and averaging at least, I don't know, 10.5 to 12 yards per reception, maybe 2, 3, 4 touchdown receptions for him, whatever that looks like as far as playing time goes. Obviously the top two wide receivers out to shoot for this team is going to be DK Metcalf and Michael Pittman Jr. I mean, both those guys are earning what, 25 and $24 million roughly in cash in 2026. That's and by the time, hopefully, if indeed Aaron Rodgers comes in early enough, those he should get enough work with those guys throughout training camp. So those would be your top two. But who is your next guy off the bench to open the regular season? The candidates right now, I think Bernard belongs in that group. Obviously, I think throughout the season you could see him because of the way he moved around at Alabama and how he was used, and he was used in motion quite a bit. I just finished up all of his 2025 targets and all, and looked at the various ways he was used in the offense, his ability to play against both press, man, off man, and zone, his ability to use the middle of the field. They used him some in the screen game, occasional shovel pass within there, and he seems like he should be a guy that picks up the offense fairly quickly. I think a lot of it might depend on the confidence level, assuming Aaron Rodgers does come back, and how much Aaron, I guess, is, I don't want to say willing to, but that might be a good description of it. Willing to work with a young guy. Look, he's got to know where he's got to be on the field. Aaron does not put up with people that don't know where to line up and where to be and depth of routes and those kind of things. So I think a lot of it will be determined on Bernard staying healthy, obviously getting the right amount of reps, and then I don't think it's out of the question that we could right out of the chute start seeing Bernard get, I don't know, 10, 12, 13 snaps a game, I guess, something around that out of the chute. But I think long term, at least when it comes to his rookie season, I think I think the Steelers would have done very well to get a guy like him close to the 40 reception mark, especially on the heels of what we haven't seen out of Roman Wilson, through his 2 seasons in the NFL at this point. Obviously was injured a lot his rookie season there, but I think that's a good target that you get him mixed in. I don't know, 500 offensive snaps, 600 offensive snaps, maybe somewhere around that realm. But once again, I think just statistically, you just don't want you don't want an empty route player out there. And
Sure.
we've seen enough. You wrote about it recently. We've seen far too many number 2, number 3 wide receivers in the Steelers offense over the last several years that were on the field, but they were running empty routes. So if we can, whatever the end up playing time looks like, you obviously would like to see him targeted. I would say, I don't know, 50, 60 times. I think that might be pushing it a little bit, but I always, when it comes to rookie wide receivers, specifically with the Steelers, seem to have this number of 40 receptions in my head if they could get the player to that.
I imagine you're also predicting and hoping and believing that DK Metcalf and Michael Pittman Jr. will eclipse the 40 reception mark.
With Pittman and Metcalf?
Yes, will they surpass 40 receptions?
Oh, God, I hope so.
Me too. I just say that to say the last time that Pittsburgh had 3 wide receivers to have 40 or more receptions was back in 2020 when Juju, Deontay Johnson, and the aforementioned Chase Claypool all did it. Now, this is hopefully going to be a more prolific passing game than what Pittsburgh has seen in recent years, but, will Rodgers continue to check down short pass kind of ways that feed onto the running backs to take away from some of the receivers? We'll see. Dave, is it unfair, or is it too assuming to believe that Bernard will just pass up Roman Wilson and that Bernard will be the number 3 and that Wilson really won't be competitive because Wilson has more experience, both with Rodgers and in the NFL, not in this particular system, obviously both starting anew, but we kind of just assume that, okay, Bernard's the guy, Wilson, an afterthought. Is that a fair assumption, or is that maybe faulty on our part?
Look, I think Roman Wilson should be given every opportunity to compete, at least out of the chute. I'm not sure that I think it's fair enough to assume that Roman Wilson will be given a chance for that role to start the season.
So could that impact Bernard's numbers then, where maybe if they're splitting time early on, then that naturally just makes it harder for Bernard to get to, say, 40 receptions?
Well, within that, I will say I'll be disappointed if Bernard can't beat out Roman Wilson.
Okay, fair. So is 40 your target number? Is that your goal number? Is that the minimum? Is that the mark of a successful year?
If you told me right now that Bernard had 40 receptions for 500 yards and 3 touchdowns, and I can either choose that door or go with the unknown behind door number 3 on let's make a deal. I would take the 40 for 500 and 3 touchdowns if that. I don't know if I'd be willing to gamble of taking more than that.
What does an unsuccessful year in terms of output look like? 20 receptions, 30 receptions, something else?
Anything under 25, I think, would be disappointing.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. I am on board with that largely, but we'll just have to see. We'll have to see how creatively he gets used. I imagine Pittsburgh will lean on that, but the offense won't run through Bernard in Pittsburgh the way it did at Alabama, where the offense really did run through him in so many ways, so many concentrated efforts to get him the football in space. That's not going to be nearly as commonplace in Pittsburgh, where you have Metcalf and Pittman and the tight ends and the backs, and I wonder how Bernard will adjust to that.
It's going to be interesting when we get to the point closer to the season where we're doing the predictions again, and we'll, for sake of the argument, let's assume Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback of this team. And remember, we did the exercise last year. Unfortunately, Ross was the key target, I think, within that in doing that. But trying to back this thing out to look at DK Metcalf, how many total reception? I mean, how many total completions for Rodgers and total yardage, and then breaking it down from there. How the maths out at that point.
Yeah, something to watch for sure. All right, the first third round selection, Drew Allar. What's a successful season for him?
let's let's get him through let's get him through snaps throughout training. I mean training camp and the and all of the preseason. Let's actually watch him take. Oh Lord, how many average snaps do we say now in 3 preseason games for this team? Let's see, let's take 72 times, or let's take 70 times 3, that's 210 offensive snaps in a preseason. Can you get him and Will Howard combined? Uh 80 offensive snaps apiece.
That's a number that was in my head when you posed it before you answered it. I think that sounds because Rodgers won't play, we would assume. Rudolph will play a little, but not nearly as much as the others, you wouldn't think.
All right. So can you get an even split? I think we would be good coming out of the preseason of at least, and I'll throw Will Howard into discussion as well because we haven't seen him play in a preseason yet. I think that's it. That's the expectation right now. Getting to get Allar to 80 or so, right around their snaps during the preseason, so this team at least has somewhat of an idea under the lights, even though it is preseason, blah blah blah, of maybe what they're potentially working with, the luxury that they did not have last season with obviously Will Howard there. And going on from there, obviously you hope, assuming Aaron Rodgers is going to be your starting quarterback, you don't have to see a backup quarterback much, if any. And assuming they go with the 2 younger guys and Mason Rudolph ends up not being part of this team, I think it all becomes a battle of, what do we see during training camp and the preseason, what the pecking order is. It's not unfathomable to think that Drew Allar is going to be the emergency third quarterback on the inactive list for a good chunk of the 2026 season, barring injuries. So I think the highlights of Drew Allar might be getting him to 80 snaps during the preseason, and then injuries and all will dictate what happens from there.
But what about the quality of those snaps, not even the quantity of them? What are you looking for in his game that tells you, okay, this guy's made some progress, or there might be something there long term with him?
Oh yeah, obviously I'd like to see a Kenny Pickett preseason from a couple of years ago. But even then, what did we really learn?
Well, I think if you're looking at not the outcome in terms of was it a touchdown or a field goal or a punt, but like, is he consistent? Is his footwork been cleaned up? Is he making good decisions? Is he processing well? Those things translate better than just the outcomes of a drive.
Sure, but within look, accuracy is one of the big things with him. Would like to see the processing at least be there, but once again, you're dealing with a lot of vanilla-ish type
Sure.
stuff during the preseason. Footwork's been a big thing that we've heard Mike McCarthy talk about there. Would like to see some pocket presence. I would just like to see something that I can attach to maybe AFC quarterback definition there, whatever that might look like. I think we're all hesitant at this point, at least most of us coming out of the Kenny Pickett preseason a couple of years ago. Look, this guy could go, I don't know, what's a good stat line for 80 offensive snaps,
Just say
assuming.
40 passes. Just cut
All
it in
right,
half for simplicity's sake.
all right. 72% completion percentage, whatever that looks like. Obviously, you don't want to see him turn the football over. You'd like to see good decisions overall, pocket poise. I don't want to get caught up of what that preseason looks like, other than maybe us being able to go back to some of the college tape with the footwork and the decision making. But even then, once again, we're talking about a lot of vanilla defenses. I don't know if we're going to. You'll probably learn more about him during the training camp reps than maybe we will potentially collectively during the preseason reps.
Sure, and I understand the preseason is vanilla for everybody, all parties involved, but if you have good footwork, it doesn't matter if you're just seeing basic cover 3 or some sort of crazy match coverage. Good footwork is good footwork. Good accuracy is good accuracy. So again, those things I think are able to be more transferable regardless of the setting in which you're in. So just can you have that consistency? And I expect this guy to make a mistake or two because he's a rookie and he's been a little mistake prone throughout his career. But can he learn from that? Can he not make the same mistake twice? Those are always really big barometers for me of how well a guy's able to take in information and learn from those mistakes. It's going to happen to all these rookies. That's just part of the adjustment to the NFL. They made them in college. They'll make them in the NFL. But can you learn from them? Can you grow quickly and understand what you did wrong? And then your next chance to rectify that, go out there and execute. That's what I'll be watching for with you, Allar.
All right.
All right, with Dalen Everett, the second of 3 third-round selections out of Georgia, the cornerback. What are you looking for, Dave?
As far as production as a rookie, obviously he should make the 53-man roster, being as how he's a third-round pick. I want to see if there is, a lot of people talk about, well, this guy could potentially play in the slot. Maybe he becomes a slot option. I don't know how much we'll actually get to learn about that. And all. I just want to know whether or not he's able to pick up this defense fairly quickly throughout the preseason, training camp. Can he make himself a 14 or at least a 2-team guy on special teams and give you something there? I want to watch his tackling, his willingness to tackle. I just want confidence that there is something to work with there, especially based on the last couple of cornerbacks that this team has actually drafted since the selection of Joey Porter. I want to at least have some sort of confidence that this is somebody that can stay healthy and at least give this team the ability potentially as early as this 2027 season to compete for an outside spot. But I think barring numerous injuries on this team, I think he's mostly going to be relegated to having a helmet and playing specifically on special teams.
Yeah, can he be a really good gunner for this team? He's got the size and physicality and tackling and straight line speed to be, I think, successful there. So can he capture one of those spots and have some really key game day value? But, can he be somebody who stays connected throughout the route in man coverage? I think there's some concern about him, his change of direction, just kind of staying through the route. And so if he can show that in preseason and training camp reps, and I'll be happy with that with Dalen Everett.
Right. Stay healthy, young man.
For sure. And then Jennings Dunker, the final third-round selection, expect him to compete for a guard spot. We would imagine left guard, but we'll see exactly how Pittsburgh decides to shuffle the offensive line. So what are your expectations for Jennings Dunker?
I think the most optimistic glass more than half full look ahead for him as he competes for the left guard spot. He wins it, and as a guy that ends up staying healthy and starting every game for you at left guard. I think that's the optimistic view of it, and I think that's fairly achievable, at least from where I sit here right now in early May. I think on the back side of it, maybe he doesn't get the starting guard spot out of the chute, but is able to at least dress and be one of your active 8 offensive linemen on game days. And we'll obviously see how the competition goes with Brock Hoffman and Spencer Anderson and all. But I think at some point, I think I would like to see him on the field at one of those guard spots and potentially show us something that he will be a member of this offensive line for many, at least throughout his rookie contract.
If he doesn't win a starting offensive line spot, could he be a 6th offensive lineman in the way that Anderson was last year? And Anderson certainly could be this year, but let's say Anderson wins the left guard job and Dunker's the backup to begin if McCarthy chooses to continue deploying the tackle-eligible role. I think Dunker fits that really well. That's a guy who's played tackle, comfortable in that sort of wider alignment, and just to get after it, run blocker next to Darnell Washington sounds really fun.
Well, obviously, if Frazier, God forbid, were to go down, I would expect probably Brock Hoffman to be the next guy off the bench there. Then then, beyond that, I guess we're looking at basically a 5A or a 6A, 6B type situation. Who gives you the most confidence should you lose one of your starting guards, assuming Dunker's not that? I think the battle within the battle becomes potentially Hoffman versus Dunker. And then so you can't forget about Spencer Anderson, because I think both of us at this point have him making the 53-man roster as well too. But in my head, I would like to think of maybe Anderson having kind of a secondary or an off the bench role as an eligible lineman, much as we saw.
But if Dunker loses the job and then Anderson's still starting left guard, could Dunker be the sixth offensive lineman?
Yeah, I believe, especially with the tackle experience that he has, I don't think that's out of the question at all.
Okay, I think it would make sense. I don't know how much they're going to use it. I don't know what McCarthy's background there is. I still need to nail that down, but I think that's one path for Dunker to see some small role if he does not win the left guard job. I was watching more tape of Dunker over the weekend, Dave, and maybe this is some sort of bias I now have because of Pittsburgh's other signings, and maybe this will sound too negative. I don't know if I mean it in this way, but I'm going to just say it and let you take it for whatever it's worth. I kind of get a Brock Hoffman vibe when I watch Jennings Dunker, and maybe that's because they both wore 67, Hoffman in Dallas and Dunker at Iowa, but is that a too negative of a comparison? Because I see some similarities there in their game.
Well, I think and I haven't done this yet, but I want to go back and look at the handful of snaps that Dunker had, I think, in his, first couple of seasons at the guard spots there. Putting a guy out on the edge versus having the guy in the phone booth are two different things there. So I'm withholding. I guess I don't understand why you're getting the Brock Hoffman vibes when Hoffman's primarily obviously been an inside guy, and Dunker, you'd have to go back a couple of years to see him inside.
Well, we know Dunker's going to play inside, and so we're going to see Dunker a lot inside. It's not about the position, but just the style of which they play. I think they're kind of similarly built guys, pretty thick bodies. Dunker a little bit taller, and maybe a little bit longer than what Hoffman is. But guys that get after it in the run game, they're aggressive. They can pull and they can snap a little bit. They're not great out in space. They're a little limited in some of the short area movements, but these are kind of road graders that really get after it in the run game. Pretty hand fighty, and just kind of their overall demeanor and play style I thought felt pretty similar.
I don't know if I remember Hoffman in the limited amount of college tape that I've seen having the number of finishes that Dunker's had where he's wound
Probably
up.
not, but you're talking college. I'm talking NFL.
Right.
I'm talking Hoffman's Dallas Cowboys career.
Yeah.
You don't think he was finishing blocks in the run game in Dallas?
Not to the same degree that I think Dunker was in college.
Well, I imagine he won't be doing that as routinely at the NFL level, the way that he was able to do that in college. But I mean, Hoffman's an aggressive run blocker. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, I mean, I just think they're cut from a similar cloth, and obviously you would hope that Dunker has a better career, quote unquote, in terms of more starts and more stability. And Hoffman's sort of been a capable swing guy throughout his career. And so I'm not saying it's always 1-to-1 in terms of career arc, but I'm just saying sort of in demeanor and play style and overall baseline traits and strengths and weaknesses. I kind of got a Hoffman vibe from Dunker.
Well, look, the pedigree, obviously, Dunker should have the pedigree. And with the way guards seemingly just get pushed down by nature in drafts, my hope is that we're not dealing with a long-term journeyman interior next guy off the bench in Dunker.
Right. No, I understand.
He was overdrafted if that ends up being the case. I mean, third round guards, regardless of the class, I think in my eye, you have an eye towards at least getting a fairly decent look at them in a starting role.
No, I understand and I agree. I'm just saying in terms of play style and how they play and sort of their traits, they felt similar. Now, hopefully Dunker can be more successful, and he's a little bit bigger and probably a little bit stronger than what Hoffman is, and so maybe that'll produce a better career. But I just kind of got that vibe in terms of their style and the way they approach the game and their strengths and weaknesses kind of felt similar to me.
All right.
All right, so obviously starting left guard would be great, but just competing, and if he's going to be a backup, then maybe a 6 offensive lineman role and showing some of that positional flexibility will be key for Dunker. All right, in the 4th round, Dave, with Kaden Wetjen, what is a reasonable expectation, successful year for him?
Top 3 in the NFL, I think, from an optimistic view in both punt returns and kickoff returns. I'd like to see him return 2 of some sort, potentially at least 1 for a touchdown, potentially 2. Would like to see some field flipping efforts, whatever that looks like. Things get the ball out near the 50-yard line. Went back and did a little bit of homework on his receiving chops and all like that. I don't know if there's a lot to really work with overall on the receiving
Were there any
end.
downfield targets that he had?
There,
Anything past line
there
scrimmage?
were, and I went and looked specifically at just last because the 2024 season. I think he had something like 6 targets or something like that. There wasn't a lot to look at, but last year with Iowa, he had 30 targets. He caught 20. He caught most of them, obviously, but when I rattle off the next stat, it'll probably make it more understandable. He had 30 targets, 29 were catchable, 22 he actually caught. He had 1 drop. His average depth of target was, hold on a minute here.
It was low, I
It was
assume.
very low, 3.4 yards. His average depth of completion was -1 yard.
What was the
Last season.
longest, you may not have this information offhand, but what was the longest downfield target that he had last year?
Let's see
Were there any
here.
vertical shots at all, or was it all just the manufactured bubble screen and swing pass and screen and RPO type stuff?
He had 4 targets of more than 17 yards down the field, 0 completions. Let me back it up here a little bit. Let me go to 10 yards or longer. These stats obviously come from Sports Info Solutions. Let's see. He had 4 targets of 10 or more air yards last season, still 0 completions there. I'm going to
Would
back.
definitely want to take a look at those. Was that on him? Was that Gronowski giving the uneven quarterback play?
I'm going to do now 6 or more air yards for him.
I hope this is a completion year.
5 targets, 0
Oh, no.
completions.
Okay.
Let me see what the catchable number was on these.
So the longest catch he had in terms of air yards was under 5 yards then last year.
4 catchable of the 5 targets, 0 receptions. Let me back it up to 3 yards. Once
Really?
again, yeah. I mean, you're talking. You're very Ryan Switzerish
Yeah, right in the Donald.
here. 9 targets of 3 or more air yards, caught 4 of them.
So can you distill this way? How many targets of 5 or more air yards last year? Are you able to
Yeah,
filter it that way?
five or more air yards last year for Wetjen at Iowa was 6 targets, 5 were catchable, 1 reception, and he went 28 yards on that one.
Okay. What about the 4 of, you said there were 4 of 17 plus?
Yeah.
So I'm confused. How many of 5 or more yards? Shouldn't there be more than 6?
Well, let me go back to 17 or more air yards again. See what that was. Make sure I'm doing not routes run, but targets. Targets, 4 targets of 17 or more air yards. 0
Okay,
receptions.
I'm a little confused because I thought we were looking at 5 or more yards. You said there were 6 total. I'm not sure how there's only 6 if there were 4 of 17 plus.
All right, I'm gonna back it back up to
Yeah,
5
just
or more air yards.
5 or 5 plus, which should include the 17.
He
It'll
had
include.
6 targets.
Okay, I'm still a little lost then, but we'll have to go back, maybe
He
check some of
had
those targets.
All right, well, what it's telling you is that 4 of those 6 targets were more than 17 air yards down the field. I guess
Okay.
I can go between 5 and 16, right? Can I
Yeah,
go
yeah, check that, I guess. I guess there's only 1 or 2 targets then.
let's see here, between 5 and 16 air yards, 2 targets, 1 reception.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. So it was a couple of those downfield shots, and apparently they were kind of catchable according to some of the numbers there.
Right. Now, yeah,
We'll have
once
to look
again,
at
when you look at his
that.
-1 complete air yard completion average, it's not great, obviously.
Yeah.
I
Anyway,
there's not the moral of the story here is it doesn't seem like there's a lot to work with there as far as the receiving side of it.
right, right. So the goal is obviously to be a successful returner, be the starting kick and punt returner. I know there'll be another guy out there on kicks, maybe even 2 with the way they were kind of increasing flexibility of the formations this year, but be starters on those units, be impactful, get Pittsburgh out of the doldrums of the kick return average column, and I think return at least 1 kick or punt for a touchdown, or have at least 1 game-changing play. Maybe it's not technically a return for a touchdown, but it's a 70-yard kick return or a 50-yard punt return that helps you win a game. It's a big key play that changes the tenor of a contest. Something like that will be the expectation for Wetjen.
Look, he's gonna have to show up in the hidden yardage category for sure because if he does it, then the growls are gonna be quite louder about where he was drafted overall. This is a returner, plain and simple, that the Steelers drafted, and I think we all knew that
Hmm.
going into it here.
Sure. What about 5th-round pick Riley Nowakowski? I think is he a lock to make the roster? I think you get into this discussion now with a 5th-rounder.
Is he a quote unquote lock? No. I mean, would I bet your house on it? Probably. Probably wouldn't bet my house on it, but I certainly like the chances. I think it is quite interesting that he'll be starting off in the running back room as a fullback there. The big question is will we get to see him utilized in some of that Connor Hayward type role where he's coming across on split zones. He obviously was split out some at Indiana. He's got receiving chops. I think this is a guy that we should, assuming he does make the 53-man roster, of getting snaps on offense. Some at fullback, some maybe as a H back in some 2 tight end type situations, maybe an occasional end of the line type situation there. As far as production goes, I think if you got 10 to 12 to maybe even on the high side, 15 receptions out of him, you've really done well in that situation there. But this is a guy too that I expect to partake on at least 2 of the special team units on top of it there. So look, they have a lot of weapons in the backfield, obviously, and Warren and Dowdle, and you got a couple of tight ends you can use in the passing game, obviously, in Fryermuth and Darnell Washington. I just think this is a more of a utility guy. Would like to see him in some short yardage situations, potentially as a lead blocker. I think you could do a fullback dive with him every once in a while, put the ball in his hands on a handoff, and then use kind of in the leak out kind of short zone passing games on top of it. I will be, even though he's not a lock to make the 53-man roster, I would be disappointed if he doesn't. And obviously, coming along with that role, making the roster, you'd expect him on a couple of special teams units.
Yeah, and that's his background at Wisconsin and Indiana. Connor Hayward, his rookie year, had 12 receptions for 151 yards and 1 touchdown. So over under 12 receptions for Riley Nowakowski in his rookie season, Dave.
I'd probably tend to go under that number because of the additions to Pittman and Bernard and Dowdle and, obviously the other weapons that you have in there. So I would, push come to shove, barring injury, I mean, we're splitting hairs there. 12's not a hefty number, but I would bet on the under.
I'll take the over slightly. Some of those short passes from Aaron Rodgers, some of those bootlegs will go into Nowakowski's hands. Buck 51 yards and a touchdown. We'll just go quickly on the yards and touchdown over under.
I'm going to take the under on the yardage.
Same.
How many touchdowns?
1.
I mean, I think he could. I think there's a potential of equaling in that. If you made it,
let's say 0.5 to give you a better over under instead of a push potential.
I'll take the over.
I'll take the over too. I'll go under yards with you, and I'll go over on touchdowns. So we disagree on the receptions. All right, with the 6th-round pick, Gabriel Rubio, expectation is first, stay healthy through camp. That's been his big bugaboo. He's got a bunch of knee issues and elbow injuries, one that shortened his season and a half last year. So that's the first thing, and then play good run defense and compete hard for a roster spot.
Yeah, look, that's the number one chore for him. I think if he stays healthy, shows you anything during training camp and the preseason as a reliable run defender, something that stuck out as his superpower on tape at Notre Dame there. And gets himself at least in a weekly discussion of whether or not he gets a helmet or not. I think you've done good with that selection overall. Now, getting on the field, barring injuries, it's hard, I guess, seeing him reach the 100 snap mark. I think a lot would probably have to happen for him to hit the 100 defensive snap mark there, but merely making the roster and you having confidence in him as a run defender, I think would be a very positive thing when it comes to Rubio.
Yeah, I think him making the roster, dressing for games, seeing a couple of snaps is a big win if you're Gabriel Rubio. Logan Lee played 47 defensive snaps last year. I know that was not his rookie season, but just to give a jumping off point, over under 47 defensive snaps for the entire 2026 season for Gabriel Rubio.
I'll take the under.
Yeah, I'll do the same. Okay, let's put it this way. Over under half a snap for Gabriel Rubio.
Oh, I'll take the over.
You'll think he'll play a snap. There's certainly no guarantee.
Right. I mean, if there are injuries or whatnot, elevation from a practice squad or whatnot, I think he gets at least the snap somehow, some way.
He's got to be healthy enough to get that snap. He can't be one of those injured guys to give somebody else, like a Kevin Jobity Jr., an opportunity, right. And that'll be the key for him. Robert Spears Jennings in the 7th round. Interesting 7th round pick, someone that we thought might go higher in the draft. Probably some good value there for Pittsburgh. So what is a reasonable expectation for him?
Look, his path to the 53 is going to run through the special teams room, and I think the Steelers probably feel that way on top of it. Not a guy that you would expect to hit the field defensively, barring injuries as a rookie overall, but I like the prospects of him, assuming he stays healthy, of being a I think the potential maybe having a 4-phase role on special teams at a very minimum, being on 2 special teams units, and us, just seeing some of that safety position flexibility, perhaps during training camp and the preseason, and just giving us some idea that, hey, this guy at worst can be a backup safety for this team for the next several years.
Yeah, I think obviously making the team will be a big win. There's certainly a path. I think it'll be a fun battle between him and Sebastian Castro for maybe that 5th safety spot. Now, if Savage does ultimately sign, does that complicate things more? Although Savage does not have much of a special teams background, so that may also still give Spears Jennings a more viable path to sticking and contributing on game day. But can he be a wing on the punt team? Can he, can he change directions? Can he break down? Can he make tackles? Can he take good angles to the football? There's certainly a straight line ability in his game, but can he change directions? And can he go out there and force a fumble or two in the preseason? He's a hard hitter. He's forced 5 of them the last 2 years. Go make a splash play, separate player from ball in a exhibition game that might cement your roster spot.
Absolutely.
And then the last 7th round pick, Eli Heidenreich, obviously a really intriguing pick as far as 7th round and final selections go. So how do we calibrate reasonable but also kind of set the goal high for Heidenreich?
I think if and I've said this since he was drafted, I think it's up to Mike McCarthy to figure out a way for him to have a legitimate shot of making the 53-man roster through some sort of offensive utilization. Now, look, once again, uh, what room will he start off? Will he start off in two rooms, in the wide receiver and running back room? He's a smart kid overall. Very, very intriguing tape, specifically as a wide receiver there. I think the things that you do try to tailor around him are the things that he was utilized doing at Notre Dame. Why not lean into what you saw on tape at Notre Dame? That he did very, very well. That's slot stuff. I think that's utilization as kind of I don't know, an H back, sweeps and those kind of things there. Can he give you any? He needs to get himself in a position where at least he's on the 53-man roster. Now he might be inactive for several games based on injuries and all, but at some point, I think on the most optimistic view here is, hey, this guy is somebody that we can give occasional slot snaps to, and a guy that we could put out there in some sort of maybe special teams role, albeit even maybe one special teams unit team worth of type stuff there. But very intriguing what he, if utilized correctly. Now the toughest thing is everybody stays healthy. How do you carve out offensive snaps, and who do you pull off the field to give him those snaps? That's going to be the hardest thing, and that's where Mike McCarthy's got the big chore here of giving this guy enough during preseason and training camp to at least give him a fighting chance to say, hey, you know what, on Sundays, if we got him on the field for 3 to 4 snaps a game, and did so without having to attach the Dree Archer flashing red light on his helmet, I think you've done good to get him in that capacity. Because if you got him on the field for, let's say, 4 or 5 snaps a game, not all of those snaps need to run through him, but one definitely can, and maybe as part of some sort of, putting him in the slot or something like that, maybe he can get a handful of targets. I would not expect, assuming he didn't make the 53-man roster or was on the roster at some point and got a helmet during the season, that we'd see his total touches, I don't know, an over-under of, let's say, 10.5. I'd probably take the under on that. But yeah, at least you got to get this guy. You got to you owe him the opportunity now of showing that he is worthy of a 53-man roster spot. And if he makes the 53-man roster, he's obviously done enough to have such a key spot on this. I think you've done yourself good. But there is a lot to work with him, a lot more on the offensive side of the football than Wetjen has to offer you there. So we better see them lean into that in training camp. And I want to see him in the second half of some preseason games, get some looks in the slot, kind of that H-back wing F, type role, and put the ball in his hands. Give him a chance.
Is there a concern that he might put too much on his plate for a guy who has to make the transition to the NFL, learn really a pro-style offense after playing in Navy's option scheme, and learn running back and learn receiver and learn additional work on special teams? How do we make sure that you don't overload this kid and really sink his chances by just giving him too much to do, not really focusing and letting him hold his ground?
I want to see how much he can handle. He's a smart kid. He did a lot of the, like I said, once again, lean into the things that he did at Navy. Just
sure. But isn't there a point where you sit there and say, we're asking too much of this guy to try to learn everything, and so he's not going to learn anything? Isn't there a risk of that for anybody, even a smart rookie?
I suppose, but if you lean into what he's been doing, where's the too much if you're leaning into?
He's got to learn a whole NFL system. He's not played in a system, a scheme. He's been playing like wing back and slot back, and it's just that stuff he won't be doing. And so learning how to pass protect, for example, is something that's going to be pretty foreign to him. And just there's a lot there's a lot on his plate and you want to make sure that you showcase his versatility and talent, but you also don't want to weigh him down and make him. He's going to be this jack of all trades, master of none. With like, what exactly do we do with him? So it'll just be very interesting to see how Pittsburgh handles him. I think you're right. I really want to see what that looks like. There's probably, I think, a fine line to walk between allowing him to showcase his versatility and flexibility while also putting him in positions to succeed and win without bogging him down with 8 million things and learn it all at once.
Look, do I expect to see him a lot as lined up in the backfield as a true running back and getting carries that way, and then have to worry about pass protection type stuff? No.
Do you expect him to be lining up out wide like a traditional receiver a lot?
I think you could, at least in a slot type situation. Yeah, I think you could and you should, because he ran away from a lot of guys. Now, albeit the competition and all, but I thought he held his own in opportunities against Notre Dame and all like that. There is a lot more to work with his receiving chops, even if you just qualified him right now as a slot receiver and a slot receiver only, and that's all that you were going to do with him throughout the preseason. There's a lot to work with, I think, there in my eyes.
Which player on the roster do you think he is most likely to take the roster spot of should he make the team? If you had to point to he's competing versus this guy to make the roster.
I think Roman Wilson.
Okay, you think Roman. Interesting. I didn't know if you were going to go with Caleb Johnson, but even a Ben Skoranek, because Skoranek a good special teamer, but if Dalen Everett is going to be a gunner potentially, another corner might get a gunner hat, Brandon Echols, somebody like that, whatever Robert Spears Jennings gets it. Could Skoranek get the squeeze here?
I mean, obviously he could, because you don't think about Ben Skoranek as for his receiving chops. You think of Ben Skoranek, the whole going back to ahead of Ben Skoranek being signed anyway. The focus was, man, this is a damn good special teams guy there. So, but you can the importance of gunners too, and damn, Ben Skoranek's one of them in the NFL. That he's going to be tough to overtake in that alone.
Sure, I don't know if Heidenreich will take his spot in terms of being a gunner, but just bumping somebody off the roster with some special teams value, which Heidenreich does have. So, yeah, is it going to be Roman? Or is it going to be Caleb Johnson? Is it going to be Skoranek? Will it be, who knows what other ways this thing could look like. So I'm very interested to see the approach in training camp with Heidenreich.
Yeah, look, just let's at least have the conversations after the preseason that they gave him enough of a chance to make the roster.
Yeah,
that's what I'm asking for.
All right, fair enough. All right, Dave, any other final thoughts on rookie expectations?
No, I think we got through it there.
Dave, you wanted to talk about kind of where does Pittsburgh go from here in the offseason? You have rookie minicamp this weekend, voluntary OTAs beginning May 18th. You have mandatory minicamp June 2nd that are then followed by some more voluntary OTAs and then training camp in late July. So what is Pittsburgh's roadmap basically leading up to training camp?
Yeah, I wanted to, maybe we'll save this a little bit more for Friday, because the main road that I wanted to kind of get to in talking about where the Steelers go from here, obviously lies mostly in the extension talk this offseason. And I think you and I both agree that it'll be quite surprising if the Steelers don't do everything in their power to get Joey Porter Jr. Signed to a contract extension. That seems like one, and there is no really, anybody competing with him as far as importance to potentially get signed. From there, we've had the talks about Darnell Washington potentially being second on that list. And then from there, having the conversations about guys like Herbig and who else was in that? Keanu Benton being within there. But I really wanted to kind of hyper focus during this episode about Herbig specifically, especially on the heels of his agent apparently was on with Braden Fajoko on his podcast, I guess over the weekend. They're talking about how the hopes is that, Herbig wants to stay here, and there's been some conversations, and I think the kind of takeaway is hopefully we see something happen there with Herbig and an extension this offseason. I don't like the overall prospects of that happening, but as part of that, I think we need to drill down and talk a little bit about whether or not it is in Herbig's best interest to potentially bet on himself this offseason, as opposed to maybe taking a low under market value contract extension this offseason. So I guess the conversation starts first and foremost is there a comparative guy or around the league as far as edge rushers go right now? What is a reasonable average per year target for Nick Herbig when it comes to edge rushers? And at any part of the conversation, should Herbig be expecting an average yearly value, even though the deal's a little bit older now, of greater than Alex Highsmith?
To take the first question, what is the comparable? I'm trying to research it right now. I don't know if you had anybody in mind. There might be one name that I'm looking at right now. I'm looking at a John Franklin Myers who signed in free agency with the Tennessee Titans as they really revamped their roster. Franklin Myers, what was his total contract? 3 years, $63 million, $42 million fully guaranteed, including a $12 million signing bonus. Putting the particulars of structure aside, 3 years, $63 million is maybe a number to start talking about with Nick Herbig.
All right. What has Franklin Myers' production been over the course of the last 3 seasons?
2023, 3.5 sacks. 2024, 7 sacks. 2025, 7.5 sacks. So the last 2 years, some similar production. Now he is older. He's going to be 30 in September. Herbig is younger, which may then lend itself to pushing Herbig above Franklin Myers. But I was just giving you one name off the cuff. He was signed this offseason with some comparable production.
All right. How many sacks? And I don't want to make this just a sack thing, but we got to start somewhere. How many sacks does Herbig have for the last 3 seasons?
And hey, sacks get you paid. He's got 16 in his career the last 3 seasons, and comparably, Franklin over the last 3 seasons has 18.
All right. I think that's a fair starting point overall. Let's also look up Boye Mafe.
Okay, signed with the Bengals, so he's in the AFC North. He had 2 sacks last year. He had 6 sacks in 24 and 9 in 2023.
All right, so what's that? What's the total of him compared to Herbig then for a 3-year total? And obviously
17 for Mafe.
All right, Mafe's both those guys played more snaps than Herbig, right?
I didn't look it up 1-to-1, but I would assume so, yes.
All right. All right, so both those guys, let's see, Franklin Myers is 21 average yearly value. Mafe is 20 million average yearly value. And then you got a guy like Highsmith who's got a little bit of age on his contract now at 17 million. To me, I think, do you think the Steelers would really consider giving Herbig a contract with, in other words, tying their wagon to him? And basically, that's what you would be doing as a starter moving past at least this next season. Is he worth more than Alex Highsmith right now?
If he were to get an extension, he would get more than Highsmith just because of the way the market has been going. And Highsmith signed his deal a couple of years ago, and the market's really exploded, primarily at the top with all the pass rushers who've gotten signed, Hunter and Watt and Anderson, and I mean, you guys know all the names there, Garrett, etc. And so it's brought everyone else up. So Herbig would get paid more than the $17 million per that Highsmith is currently under.
Yet Highsmith would unequivocally be your starter, right?
Well, I mean, I'm just talking from a contract perspective. Sure. I think it's hard to sign all 3 to those big money deals. I think if you're signing Herbig to that deal, then he's going to have to start for you, which means that you can't have Watt or Highsmith blocking his way. Ergo, one of those guys has to be on the move.
All right. As far as organizational philosophy goes as well, too, it feels like it just feels like, I mean, you're also going to be technically, I guess, paying Herbig a higher average yearly value than a guy than your team captain in Cam Hayward, right?
Yeah, but I don't think that calculation matters. I mean, Highsmith has made more than Cam Hayward now, right? And so that didn't go into Pittsburgh's calculation. That's a D-line, interior D-line edge discussion. So I don't think that's going to ruffle any feathers.
All right. What do you think about the likelihood, knowing about the way the Steelers do things, that there's a good chance of Herbig? And look, I agree. If he's going to aim, he should aim high. He should probably aim at the $21 million APY. But logically, what do you think of his chances of securing a contract, even if only the first year was fully guaranteed of it? Right now, what do you think of the likelihood of Herbig being able to get that kind of money out of the Steelers this offseason?
Probably not great if they're going to stick and hold on to Highsmith and Watt for the season. I don't think you can really, it's not really financially prudent to then pay Herbig that kind of money, knowing that there'll be a rotational role for him. I'd also mention Odafe Oweh as a potential comparable in terms of contract value. He's at 24 million, so a little above Mafe and Franklin Myers. But yeah, I think that it's hard to pay, obviously, all three of those guys monster contracts.
And then you got our buddy Andrew Van Ginkel out there at 23 million right now on I think he's he's on what is he on? Van Ginkel, what's his contract right now? He is signed through, he's got a lot of void years in there on top of it there. So, and he's also 31 at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess, long story short, I would think that if Herbig's going to sign a contract this year, this offseason, a contract extension, it's going to have to come in under comparable market value for him. And I'm thinking in my head more along the lines of a Harold Landry type deal, which is 14.5 average yearly value.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure that's what Pittsburgh would be offering if they were to offer a contract. Really, to answer the crux of your question from earlier, is Herbig better off betting on himself? But it all depends on what contract is offered. If he's offered something in that 20 million range, then I think you take it if you're Herbig, if you want to stay here in Pittsburgh long term. But assuming that does not happen, then yes, you bet on yourself. You do the Bud Dupree thing. You play out your contract. I know Dupree got tagged. Herbig, we assume will not get tagged, although you never know what could happen down the road. And then you hit free agency and get the bag the way that Dupree did. Dupree got a ton of money coming off a torn ACL. Herbig, if he's healthy, will get a ton of money even more.
And one thing I looked ahead this morning was at kind of the free agency class of edge rushers, assuming not much changes between now and next March. Herbig, if he did bet on himself, and let's say he ended up playing, due to injury to either Highsmith or Watt, ended up playing a little bit more, had another, let's say, 7, 8, 9 sack season for what let's say he had a career year, for whatever that looks like there. There is a good chance that Nick Herbig could enter free agency and we know that generally if anybody was to come out of the blue per se, that probably some of those guys around the league might get the tag. I don't think we'll be looking at that as a situation for Herbig, but it could come into the equation depending on if Highsmith drops off and what happens with Watt and all. That would be a good problem for Herbig to face if he was given the franchise tag next offseason. But let's assume that he wasn't. He could be right in the running as one of the prize edge rushers in the 2027 free agency class. And a lot of times that ends up being very, very lucrative for those kind of players in the supply and demand and the hustle and bustle of free agency. That's why I really think that unless Herbig, they knock his socks off with a deal somewhere in the $20 million average yearly value range, which I don't think he's going to get from the Steelers. And even if he did, I would think that only the first year money of 2026 would be fully guaranteed. I think it might be in his best interest to bet on himself.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense, and I assume that'll be his posture unless Pittsburgh does blow him away with a deal. My thought has always been Pittsburgh does not need to make a decision right now, although it may be a little less than ideal. You can go into next offseason, the start of it, and then decide how do we want to proceed from here. Herbig will be a pending free agent, but you still have time to work out a long-term deal. You can still then decide, okay, how did Herbig play in 2026? How did Highsmith play? How did Watt play? Do we need to make a cut with Watt or Highsmith to remove there and to retain Herbig. Like, there's still some time next offseason to still retain Nick Herbig. I know that he'll be looking at free agency and wondering what that could look like if he tests, but if he truly wants to stay in Pittsburgh and then they're willing to offer him $20+ million to be the starter, probably good reason to believe he'll stay in Pittsburgh. So people always want to make this decision. Oh, what are you going to do right now? I think you can wait till next year and figure it out.
I understand that reasoning, and I'm not going to talk in absolutes here, but if Nick Herbig is not signed to a contract extension this offseason, he's gone
You
next
think? Like,
offseason. Yeah.
for sure.
I-
Why is that? Why is it so impossible for Pittsburgh to re-sign him the way that half the NFL re-signs their star free agents before free agency begins?
Because I think the lure of the free agency and more fuller guarantees will be out there somewhere else than it would be in Pittsburgh.
Okay, yeah, I could see the guarantees having an impact, but if he loves Pittsburgh and if he's going to play well in Pittsburgh and start, I still am not going to close that door. Obviously, the odds of him becoming a free agent and going somewhere else do increase if he's a couple months out from it. But I look at like an Alec Pierce of the Colts, the big name receiver, the top receiver. Was he going to leave? He ends up staying with Indianapolis, just as kind of one point of a free agent who was able to be retained by his current and previous team. So, I think that's a smarter way to go about it, to give yourself as much time and information as possible. I don't think you're going to get Herbig on a cheap deal right now. He's not stupid. His agent's not stupid. They're not going to take some below market deal, knowing what's on the other side if he has a really good season and continues to play well. So really not much you can do right now. So you basically have to let it play out and go to next off season and evaluate from there.
All right, at the very least, if Nick Herbig does sign a contract extension this offseason, are we both convinced that it would be greater than Alex Highsmith's average yearly value of $17 million right now?
Yes, and shame on Herbig's agent if it's not.
Exactly. That's where I'm at. I really think that Herbig should look at this as and look, overall, technically, he doesn't have a lot of mileage on him, and if you look at his pass rush percentage and all compared to the amount of snaps that he's played, compared to a couple of the other comparatives that we've thrown out there, I guess in who were the ones that you threw out there?
Owe, Franklin Myers, you mentioned Boye
Yeah.
Mafe as all comparables.
Yeah, I think I'd really be willing to bet on myself. And look, if I got in a situation where Pittsburgh thought I was a primary need to sign next off season, and hey, we can't let you get to that point, then I've obviously had a pretty damn good season. I think I want to take at least a look at what's on the other side of the rainbow there.
Just out of curiosity, what is the franchise tag for an edge guy next year, roughly? I'm sure it's obscene, but do we have a rough
Let's
estimate?
see. Over the cap has and don't they throw the linebackers all in one category. 30.1 million.
Yeah, they threw the linebackers in the category. That matters more for an off-ball linebacker
Right.
because they'll never get the tag because the edge guys inflate.
Right.
Obviously, that money's still huge and it's only going to continue to go up as Will Anderson and these contracts get larger and larger, but probably would not be used. But in a world where you cut Highsmith and you're not paying a quarterback at all, maybe next year you're on rookie contracts, theoretically,
Look,
be a
look.
placeholder.
The only way that comes into a situation, I think, is either Highsmith or Watt or both end up missing a lot of games in 2026, and Herbig stays healthy, has to play 700-800 snaps in total, just double-digit sacks. He's that guy still, but on a higher percentage of snaps, and you're thinking to yourself, hey. Do we go into the draft looking for our next edge rusher that way, or do we go with the devil that we know and we feel confident of tying our wagon to Herbig for the next at least three additional years, that this is a guy that can secure one of our edge spots and us not think twice at the at the tag amount. Then obviously you try to work out a deal based on the tag number. So it would have to take a very unique situation, I think, for the Steelers to get the spot where they're considering the franchise tag of $30.1 million on Nick Herbig. And obviously that number could rise a little bit depending on whatever else happens between now and the start of the season with some other edge guys out there.
Yeah, that's fair. Unlikely, but it is, as you always say, that kind of tool in the tool belt if a team feels like they have to use it. So I think it's the best thing for all parties, for Herbig and for the team, to let 26 play out, not do an extension, and evaluate things in March of next year.
I guess where I want to get to is what percentage of a chance now, sitting at this point, do you give Nick Herbig of signing a contract extension with the Steelers this offseason?
I don't want to say it's impossible.
Greater than 10%?
I was going to say 10%.
I'll go less than 10%. Just to be different. I'll go 8% chance.
Okay, so we both find it to be unlikely, which to you means that he will not be a Steeler. Like, this will be his last year, because you're very confident he if he doesn't resign now, he'll be gone in 27.
That's where I sit right now on May the 4th be with you day.
Where does that leave Pittsburgh long term at edge? You'll have Watt, another year older. Highsmith is signed through 2027, I believe. What is the future of the position?
I think we'll see, obviously, how with the Sawyer progression, if any. What kind of snaps is he even able to play? Show you, but I think you're looking into the 2027 draft at that point, and depending on what you do at quarterback, I think you could seriously be looking at an edge in the second round.
Yeah, maybe. And I said that not to forget about Jack Sawyer, but I don't believe he's going to be the long-term starter at the position. He'll be a quality backup, rotational guy, number 3, which is a role he could assume for 2027 if Watt and Highsmith are still in Pittsburgh. But it's just not your long-term game breaker that a Herbig or Highsmith or Watt have been throughout their tenures.
Yeah, I think we're having a year from now, we could potentially be talking about this team drafting an edge. And I don't want to roll out first round because we don't know how the quarterback thing's going to play out and all. But we could be potentially a year from now talking about a draft pick for the Steelers drafted in the first 2 rounds from the edge position.
The goal for Herbig is he's got to be healthy this year. One of the knocks on him is you've had those nagging issues that have given him some fits. He played in 15 games last year. He played in 13 games the year before. So you want this guy to show that he can be healthy. He's not the biggest guy. He's a pretty small guy with a pretty underwhelming frame. It's obviously not prevented him from being a really impact edge rusher, and something that you and I got wrong in our evaluation of him coming out of college. But when you're a smaller guy with some injuries, teams I think will knock you even more for it. So staying healthy wire to wire is going to be really critical for him.
And then on top of it, can we watch another progression in his run defense?
Yeah, and just can he be
we
more
know
of an
he can
every down?
rush the passer,
Mm-hmm. And just being, I don't know how many of those chances will present themselves, depends on health in front of him, but can he be a more every down guy? I did feel like whenever he was forced to play a more every down role later last year, he did start to slump. There was a really quiet streak that he had last year where he had 0 sacks from week 12 to week 17, and he was playing some starter snaps in that week 11 to week 12 range, and then was kind of a backup, I think, when Highsmith, or maybe when, I forget what all happened there, but then Watt went down with the lung injury, and Herbig snaps ticked back up, and the production really wasn't there. He kind of had the first slump of his career as he started to get late into the year under a heavier workload, and teams will be looking at that and saying, can this guy still produce at a high level when he has to be the guy and play 80% of the snaps?
All right, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole much further. We're an hour and a half into this thing, and Alex and I started our conversation this morning saying, what the hell are we going to talk about to fill up 90 minutes? And here we are. So I'm glad we went down. The Herbig thing was on my mind this morning. Let's talk more about, let me end with this question here about other potential extension candidates not named, Joey Porter, Darnell Washington, and Nick Herbig. Is it less messier, at least in your head, now that we've had this conversation about Herbig? Is the conversation a little less messier when it comes to getting Keanu Benton in extension this offseason than, say, Herbig?
I mean, it's less messy because there were fewer obstacles in the sense of, you don't have a Watt and a Highsmith in front of Benton. You have Hayward, obviously, but that's a different level of contract, and the contract for Benton will be a lot cheaper than it would be for Herbig. So the question on Benton's more about, is he worth it? Do you want to pay him now, or do you want to see him replicate 2025 and build upon it in terms of his run defense and just improving his game all the more. The question's more about the player than it is the position. With Herbig, it's more about the position than it is the player.
All right, so here's your homework to get ahead of Friday's show, assuming no squirrels run by in the meantime and distract me or you within that. Let's find a comparative maybe for where Benton sits right now.
I've made the comparable to Benton. I said, maybe I'm spoiling the answer, but Travis Jones. But
Okay.
when did he get paid last year? Didn't he get paid last year, Travis Jones, or was that 2 years ago? When did Travis Jones get paid? But to me, if that was last year, that's a very clear comparable. Yeah, that was December of last year. 3 years, $40.5 million. Their career arcs, the breakout years in 25 in terms of sack production, very similar.
All right, 13.5 APY. Let's continue the conversation with him a little bit more in depth on Friday. Then we'll talk about where this team moves forward, and then maybe we'll rank the percentage of chances of Porter, Washington, Herbig, Benton, and then we'll throw Boswell into it as well too, as far as potential contract extensions. I will say that this team is up there, or will be up there, as far as cash spending goes after they get their draft pick signed, and assuming Aaron Rodgers returns to this team at least $15 million, the cash spending will be looking, beyond Porter. And even trying to squeeze in Washington, I think this team will do good to get those two signed from where I sit right now. And then on top of it, I don't think Boswell's going to move the cash all that much needle there. But you do have the fact that you're probably going to have to make him the highest paid kicker in the NFL. And obviously the guaranteed money that comes along with it in year one will move the needle a little bit there. But let's continue this conversation on where the Steelers go from here, specifically with extensions on the Friday show, assuming no squirrels run by.
Can I give you one more name to just chew on for the Friday show in terms of extension that we've not talked about? I don't think one time that I was thinking about the other day, Dave. Can I give you the name? I'm trying to tease it as much as I can here. Spencer Anderson, contract year for him. I know that he's competing for a spot. We'll see what happens there, but any chance for an extension for Spencer Anderson?
Let me chew on it. I'll get back to you on Friday.
All right. Sounds good. All right, Dave, anything else to talk about? Feel free. If not, we can get to some reader emails and close out today's show. No live stream tonight, part of our normal schedule, but just a note there. So, Dave, anything in the email machine?
All right, we got one from JJ in the Bluegrass States. Hey, about the draft. Hey, guys, it's JJ. It's been a couple of years since I've written you two, but I'm a loyal listener. First off, my wife and I went to the draft, and it was a fabulous experience. Loved all 3 days. The city did a great job. Now to brag, I got three picks correct in my mock that my brothers and I do every year after listening to you guys to get me informed. He says, I missed on Vega in round 1, but I nailed Jeremy in round 2. I also got Allar and Wetjen, but I had them in the later rounds. I almost had a fourth. He says, Con drafts a player from the national championship team every year. So in the 6, I went back and forth between Lewis Moore and Nowakowski from Indiana, but had not had a safety in my mock, so I went with Moore. He says, I got 3 in 2023, and that was missing out on JPJ. He says, my question, does drafting Allar say they are not as high on Howard as they say? Seems that way to me. It's hard to develop 2 quarterbacks at the same time. Only so many reps to go around. That's obviously a really, really good question. Congratulations and on your mocks and all, JJ, good on you on that. So the big question is what does the drafting of Allar say about Will Howard, especially in light of Mike McCarthy saying Will Howard is a guy that I really look forward to working with. He would have been higher than a 6th-round draft pick last year. Yada, yada, yada. Howard's a future NFL starter. Just a couple of days ago in the NFL, in an interview that he gave, is this any type of indictment on Howard, or is this Mike McCarthy just saying, I want a lot of opportunities to work with young quarterbacks?
I feel it's more the latter. You hire McCarthy to develop quarterbacks, give him some quarterbacks to develop. I don't want to twist myself into pretzels trying to think about, what does this mean and what does he think? These quarterbacks will still write that story, and their play from here on out will dictate which guy the franchise gravitates towards, and they'll both be developed. They'll both have chances to play in the preseason. So, we'll just have to wait and see here. I'm not going to try to sit there and make a lot of proclamations on who's the guy and who's not and what does it all mean. These guys will get to play, and their play will ultimately do the talking.
Absolutely. And that goes back to some of the conversations. Man, I think as a Steelers fan right now, you obviously want both of these young quarterbacks to stay healthy throughout the rest of the offseason. And that goes with any player on the roster, not just the quarterbacks. But I hope that we get to a point where we're talking about around 80 snaps for each in the preseason, and then neither one of them missing any practices during training camp, and then us getting a full training camp worth of meaningless yet useful training camp recap and stats and all like that from Alex. That's the next line in the sand when it comes to both
Let me
those kids.
just say, not to be a little less politician-y in the answer. I don't think drafting Allar means his team is secretly down on Will Howard and it's all been just puffery. I think they do like Will Howard. I think they like Drew Allar. I think both can be true. I think both are true.
I would agree with that as well too, and I would hope both get a long look as long as possible with the CBA rules this offseason here, and maybe it's a good thing. Maybe we'll look back and saying if Aaron Rodgers is not there for OTAs, maybe that'll be a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think McCarthy was trying to say that the other day, that we don't even want him there for OTAs. Like, Rodgers can still be at OTAs and not have to get a lot of reps and still be a good presence to be around young guys and be around Allar and be around Bernard. Like, I think that's still good for the group. And you could still have reps to go around. Look at a training camp practice. If it's like OTAs or vice versa, if OTAs are like training camp, you get 12 reps in a session, you get 4 for the group there. And so those guys still all get the reps. They just get divvied up and with different teams, first, second, third team. So the reps are still there for all those guys.
All right, let's move to Paul Lutz here. He says, position focus. Hello, gentlemen, and fantastic jobs as always. I know there's been some talk about you missing picks or sliding somebody, but I don't necessarily think that was the case. Going into this draft until the day before, whenever they found out Broderick Jones had a setback with his neck injury, tackle wasn't a big focus for the first round. People want to say that you were sliding Ihanature, but I just don't think tackle in general was the focus, and all clues supported your arguments. Keep up the great work. Don't change a thing. Paul, I appreciate the kind of defense there, but within that, look, I know I know all the stuff about Broderick came out right before the draft, but this team knows more about Broderick Jones than what they were saying about Broderick Jones, I think, there. And I think if you want to I was thinking about this the other night, the way to reverse engineer this, especially in light of us showing different viewpoints of the whole Makai Lemon and the Eagles trading up, and how the Steelers pivoted to Ihanature and all. Unequivocally, and I think if there's anything that we saw coming out of this draft and the selection of Ihanature with what happened with Makai Lemon, that Ihanature was the next guy on the list. I mean, I'm pretty confident in saying that at this point, and it's a Captain Obvious type thing there. Now, I think when you reverse engineer this and looking at, I think where the hole that I fell into was looking at Ihanature at right tackle only, and thinking that, okay, if they're going to look at a tackle, it'd be more left tackle. I think when you look at the pre-draft visitor list, I think it's okay to think that maybe they knew enough about Ihanature and pre-Zoom meetings and Senior Bowl interactions and all like that, that the other couple of tackles that they had brought in, Bell and Burke, I think in the rearview mirror, looking at it now, it's okay to look at it as, hey, what if somebody slides, i.e. Makai Lemon, we don't take a Ihanature, and then we still want to take a tackle at some point, then guys like Bell and Burke are fallback options at that point. Now, how would have things have changed the way Alex and I may have looked at this pre-draft had Ihanature been brought in for a pre-draft visit there? especially with the Blues Clues and the guys being brought in, first round draft picks, yada, yada, everything that goes along with that. So I guess what I'm getting at, I think Paul's leaning too far our way there and probably giving more credence to the fact about the whole Broderick Jones outlook maybe coming on all of a sudden. You see where I'm coming from here, Alex? We were still wrong for not giving more
Mm-hmm.
serious consideration to a guy like Ihanachor. And quite honestly, in my book, it was the rawness and it was the fact that the last 2 years at Arizona State, he was a right tackle guy when I, in my head, thought that they were going to be looking for a left tackle only guy. So, lesson learned on my part, and really the same with at least in my eyes when it came to Dunker as well too. I was so hyper focused on Dunker being a right tackle his last couple of years, and that if he did kick inside, which most of the consensus was with Dunker that he would kick inside, how messy would that look like if he's having to switch sides? And so I think I got personally, when it comes to the offensive lineman, I got caught up too much with the recency bias of sides that the guys played instead of looking at the quality of the prospect overall.
Yeah, I think for me, it just for Ihanacho at least was I was looking for the connections, the more overt interest. Even though I had Omar Cooper Jr. in my final mock draft, I thought there was some connections there to justify and spin him being the exception. So that's kind of the blinder that I put on there was so they only brought in 3 tackles for visits, only 1 first rounder. It was Fano, it wasn't Ihanacho, and so Ihanacho probably not in clear consideration. So something to adjust for next year. But I appreciate was it Paul that sent the email in to kind of give the defense there, and that's very kind. But point is, we got it wrong, and I don't want to make a bunch of excuses about why I got it wrong or why it's okay that I got it wrong. It's just you got it wrong. I missed as badly as I missed on a first round prediction, and we'll learn from it and move on.
And I put too much credence overall in maybe the possibility of Vega falling. I knew better. That even though there was one hurdle, it was a big ass hurdle.
Yeah, and
Uh,
it blocked you.
Yeah. All right, Todd Gensler, let's take one more about our talk about the collective the other day, big board. Really enjoyed your discussion Friday regarding the collective and the Steelers' tendency to veer away from that. It does seem odd, especially when they appear to be missing on their draft picks. For instance, the entire 2022 draft class of the Steelers is no longer on the team. My question is there any research to determine how many players that are off the collective are ranked low that actually hit? Could it be quite a few, only to justify going in that direction often, trying to find a semblance of reasonably to justify veering on your own path that is inconsistent with what the collective merits? I don't want to go back down into that whole collective argument and what I mean, is there any picks off the top of your head that fell outside of maybe the quote unquote collective that have hit?
Not off the top of my head. I mean, I don't have all the consensus boards up on file right now. I'm sure some have, but I think, and I've not studied this. I have not cobbled together all the data, but I think the data does tend to say that those who stray from consensus and quote unquote reach do typically miss more than hit. So I think it's more proof that consensus matters in that aspect.
All right, and another thing I was thinking about, this will be a conversation for a later day, is where is it okay to start fanning out more from the collective? Is it the top 100? I guess where is the divergence point of scheme, character, everything, especially in a not so enticing draft class? Where does it become more acceptable to go outside, go and what is considered way outside of the collective? Is it 40 picks? Is rankings? Where is the convergence point of all right, it's more acceptable to go outside of the collective by say 30 spots, 40 spots.
Well, there's no hard and fast rules to any of this. There's nothing that says that at pick 30 you're okay, but pick 33 you're in the danger zone. The more you stray, the higher risk you increase. And then that's just a simple model of it all. It also doesn't say that it's more acceptable to stray at this point of the draft. Now there's less consequences if you have a consensus quote unquote reach in the first round. It's a lot more consequential potentially than in say the sixth round. So the later you do it in the draft, the less weight it may carry to stray. But there's not the point is, to my understanding at least, is the consensus board says never stray dramatically from the consensus because it increases your risk and increases your likelihood you won't get the pick correct. But the later you do it, obviously the less harmful, quote unquote, it may be to your franchise.
All right. All right. Well, we're going to continue have talks about consensus boards, and obviously the hyper focus being on Wetjen, who we talked about
Could I just
earlier.
say, I maybe I'm misinterpreting it, but I feel like you're looking for like these hard and fast rules on the
No,
consensus board. I
I'm
don't think
just
this is not what the consensus board is about.
I'm just wondering how much where do we see, at what point in most drafts do we see it fan out, I guess, more?
What do you mean by fan out? Like in terms of teams straying from the consensus?
Yeah, where does the consensus really start changing? You know, where is the tipping point of variance on a consensus, or is it through all, basically 7 rounds?
Yeah, I'm not really sure what you're asking. Are you saying when is it more likely teams stray from the consensus? Is it earlier? Like when does that start?
I guess is where is the major fanning out starts happening in the consensus?
I don't think there's, again, it's not one of those hard and fast rules. If it starts here, it can happen at any point. It's happened in the first round with Cole Strange and Terrell Edmonds. It can happen in the mid rounds. We talked about Caleb Douglas the other day. It can happen at any point. There's nothing that says that this is when the team starts straying from the consensus. Actually, some people thought this year there would be a lot of break from consensus because the draft class was weaker, like you talked about. But in fact, it was one of the more quote unquote chalk years where there certainly were teams that strayed from consensus, but it happened with less frequency than past years. And so that was an interesting kind of nugget where the teams, even though it may have been unintentional, follow consensus more closely this year than past years.
I guess what I'm getting at is, let's say pick 101 to 150 in a consensus. What is the we'd have to do a lot. Somebody's probably done this. I know as well too. I just haven't gone down the rabbit hole enough to find it. But is there a high probability that the consensus has a lot of the same players within 100 to 150? I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think generally any big subset of picks, any 50 group sample size would have a lot of the consensus names in or thereabouts. I don't know if that's really the point of the consensus board.
All right, and at what point does something go against the consensus? How many draft spots? I guess.
Again, it can happen at any point. There's nothing that says it can't happen at pick 12, that it's more likely to be pick
No,
12 than it is.
what I'm saying is, all right, this was a consensus 170 pick, but he was drafted 150.
I'm
Where
still not
where
really
where
sure.
does the variance? I'll have to map it out better in my
Okay.
head into
Okay.
words of what.
Maybe I'm just misunderstanding. I might be wrong here.
All right, but we're going to continue on with this, consensus talk and all like that. I get the overall view with it as well too, and I do accept the fact that it's probably not surprising that the Steelers strayed from consensus, right?
Well, yes, because like in the Colbert days, I know Colbert did not care at all about what consensus said, but it's also maybe reinforcing consensus because often when he did, he missed pretty darn badly. I think Edmonds was viewed as the biggest consensus reach in consensus board, quote unquote, history. And obviously, look how that pick turned out.
All right, look, if somebody on the consensus board ranked 150th
Okay.
and you took them at 100,
Mm-hmm.
is that considered going against,
Yes, it is going. It's considered going against
all
consensus.
right,
Yes.
if he win at 130, is that against consensus?
like I said, I think you're trying to find like these lines of where is the tipping point, and I'm
Right.
sure somebody has a model of exactly where that is. But I would just say, in a more layman's term sense, unscientific way, the more you stray from consensus, the higher risk you increase. So if you're at 149 and he's 150, you're pretty much dead on with consensus. If you're 120, then you increase risk. If you're 100, you increase risk. If you're 50, you increase risk. It's a scale. It's not necessarily like this is where it starts. It just is an ever present thing, and the more you stray, the more risk consensus says there is.
All right, and then you can parlay that back into projected rounds of guys then as well too, right? So if a guy is listed as a fifth to sixth round guy, if you took him in the fourth, then you were obviously against consensus, right?
Sure.
All right.
Okay.
So in other words, I mean, should we in our profiles be putting rounds on guys of second to third, third to fourth, fourth to fifth?
In terms of NFL projection
Yeah,
or in terms of our grade?
as far as our grades.
Well, we do our grades not based off of rounds for the reasons I mentioned before, because it doesn't always take into account value of a position or depth of a class or something like that. We do it just based off of player outcomes.
All right. All right. As usual, I didn't put into words what's rolling through my head. So I'll try to do a better job of that as we go forward into consensus talk. But anyway, I appreciate the email, Todd. So with that, we're almost at the 2 hour mark, amazingly. And we will be back on Wednesday, hopefully doing a roundtable with several contributors from Steelers Depot, getting the thoughts on the draft class and probably a few of these undrafted free agents as well too. And then on Friday, maybe we'll talk a little bit about Keanu Benton and moving forward with some of these extensions in the offseason. And I think that's our plans here in the here and now. And we'll find out if we have any more invites to talk about to rookie minicamp. So in the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button. Follow the directions that way. So until Wednesday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.